Dear ladies and gentlemen, we are very grateful to be here on behalf of the whole team, as you can see listed here at the first title slide of our presentation. Well, I'm so impressed by the last two presenters, which actually deconstruct the borders of the science and put the limits absolutely somewhere else. But here in our presentation, as the title suggests, we will share some early results from our ongoing research focused based on the children. So we are getting back from the mothers to the children in a particular Bronze Age community. And in our case study, we will focus on the well-known burial site at the Nižná Myšľa, which is situated in the eastern Slovakia. This site is now being re-examined as a part of a new Polish-Slovak project. And we will show some very first insights that will help to explore both the biological and social lives of the youngest, and give the clues about how childhood may have been understood and lived in the prehistoric times. Although our data are still incomplete, as many analyses are still ongoing, we hope that these early findings will offer at least some kind of the useful perspective and point to the new directions for the studying childhood and community life in the Bronze Age, and I'm talking especially about the northern part of the Carpathian Basin. To provide some background, we focused on the Northern Carpathian region during the early Bronze Age, which is roughly 1950 till 15th century BC. And at this time, the southwestern Slovakia, so we are in this area, was affected by Unice culture and later by Magyarovce culture. And in contrast, in the eastern Slovakia, it shows different influences, especially from the epicorded Košťany culture, which formed the basis of the Ottomani Fuzesabon culture, that is one associated with the cemetery in the Nižná Myšľa. In this period, inhumation or skeletal burial was the main practice, with more than 100 cemeteries so far unearthed. However, it is concerning that only around 10% of these sites has been studied through the anthropological analysis, and therefore it's still very difficult to draw some kind of the reliable conclusions about the demographic structure of this population. And moreover, to this date, the DNA analysis have been published only from one site, and it's particularly Unice Cemetery at Šoporňa. And as a result, we currently lack the data needed to reconstruct the genetic history and the population connections of early and middle Bronze Age communities in Slovakia and surrounding regions. Getting to the main point, and that is the cemetery in Nižná Myšľa, that one is one of the largest early Bronze Age burial sites of the Ottomani Fuzesabon culture. Since 1977, archaeologists have excavated 792 graves containing the remains over 760 men and women. Most were buried in the positions that follow the formalized gender rules. You already heard that the males were usually placed on the right side, in this case, along the south-north axis, and the females on the left side along the north-south axis, both facing the east. What's very interesting, the graves in the cemetery were clearly arranged in kind of the rows. And based on the 19 available radiocarbon dates, we know that the cemetery was used over a longer time period, from 1960 till 1630 BC, while burials were gradually moving from the west to the east direction. People were buried with the different types of grave gods, depending, as usual, on their sex, social status, and time period. Despite the site importance, the more comprehensive anthropological analysis of available osteological remains is still missing. The published estimated ages of the individuals, you can see the statistics here, were determined solely by archaeologists and therefore likely to be inaccurate. This has been confirmed by a partial anthropological analysis, currently available only for 95 individuals, which suggests that the sub-adults or non-adults, particularly children, may be much more represented than previously assumed, especially at the expense of adultus age at that category. And these children are falling into the infants 1, 2, and 3 categories. With regard to the overall representation, the distribution of the child burials is highly unbalanced. As seen at the other side, newborns up to 5 months old are almost entirely absent at the Nižná Myšľa as well. Children aged at 5 months to 6 years are more visible, with a clear dominance of the individuals aged 6 to 12 years. The children burial practices at Nižná Myšľa were relatively diverse. There was a clear dominance of a single inhumation burials, typically following previously mentioned gender-related body positions. Children were also frequently part of a multiple burials. You can see one of the examples here, accompanying either other sub-adult or an adult individual. As a unique example of the manipulation with the children's remains might be referenced by so-called ritual pit 308, and in this pit the remains of 2 children aged 3 to 5 and 9 to 12 years were found in a non-piety position together with adults and 1 juvenile individual. And moreover, interestingly, a multiple cremation burial was also documented, containing the remains of a child around 3 years old, along with the adult female. And based on the radiocarbon dating, the burial belongs to the final chronological phase of the cemetery and therefore might reflect the transition in the burial customs from inhumation to cremation, which is typical for the Middle and later final Bronze Age in this region. By taking the closer look at the grave gods associated with the children in Nižná Myšľa, we can distinguish the several categories. The most numerous were graves that contained either no artifact or only a set of the ceramic vessels here, which can be classified as relatively poor in the overall context of the cemetery. Statistically, those were followed by less represented, wealthier children graves, which typically included a variety of the ornaments made of bronze, faience, and muscles, often used to decorate the head, chest, and the upper limbs. The last common category, here in this corner, consists of the children burial with tools, such as bone awl, lithic flakes, or bone needles. Such tools may be associated with the craft-related activities in which children may take part in the community. And as mentioned previously, anthropological study focused so far a subsample of the 42 sub-adults. According to the body position, it included more boys than girls. The most frequent age at that category was children aged 6 to 11 years. And when looking at the mortality patterns, you can see the graph display here, we observed a slightly higher mortality among the girls up to age 5. However, from the age of 5 onwards, the boys show higher mortality rates. This shift might reflect the differences in the biological resilience, exposure to stressors, or possible gender-specific roles and expectations in early childhood. On the other side, the non-specific stress indicators, such as cribra orbitalia and enamel hypoplasia, were observed in approximately half of the individuals. Those non-specific indicators rates are consistent across all age categories, therefore suggesting the exposure to stress, possibly linked to diet, health, or environmental conditions. Although more boys were again included in the sample, a high portion of the girls show signs of a non-specific stress. Therefore, they're supporting the earlier observations of a potential vulnerability that might have been somehow gender-related. The evidence of the dental caries was identified in 4 individuals. 1 individual showed signs suggestive of a systematic disease, possibly scurvy or anemia. Additionally, healed minor trauma was recorded on the right parietal bone of a child aged approximately 9 to 12 years. We also observed the non-specific periostitiس affecting the ribs, lower limb bones, and orbital roof. In 5 individuals, these lesions may be attributed to the systematic conditions. Interestingly, the teeth was used quite common as a tools also in the children category, as we documented in the case of 5 individuals. 3 of whom were female, being around the age of 10. This was evidenced by characteristic patterns of abrasion, enamel polishing, and notching, suggesting the involvement in processing leather or fibers for textile production or basketry. Furthermore, the changes at the muscle attachment sites were present in the humerus and femur of the 2 individuals, likely reflecting activity-related stress from as early as age 7. To better understand the life of the sub-adult individuals in Nižná Myšľa, we attempt to combine archaeological and anthropological data to explore how burial contexts relate to chosen skeletal stress indicators. Non-specific skeletal markers like dental enamel hypoplasia and cribra orbitalia appeared in both richly and poorly equipped burials, showing no clear link to the grave cuts. These indicators were more frequent in the girls, despite more boys being analyzed, suggesting possible, again, gender-based vulnerability. Activity-related skeletal changes were more common in graves containing tools, especially bone awls, you can see here in examples, or those with the poorer material inventories, hinting at the possible social economic dimension. Again, girls were more often affected than boys, despite the higher number of boys analyzed. This could suggest that the young girls were more often actively involved in craft-related activities, possibly from an early age. The ADNA data are currently available for a pilot group of 23 individuals and include 2 adults and 21 sub-adults. It is promising that the preserved endogenous human ADNA is relatively high, averaging about 58%, and this allows us for high coverage genomic data and detailed analysis in the future. A basic PCA plot, as you can see here, shows that the population from Nižná Myšľa is genetically quite uniform, forming a tight cluster here, these red squares in this area. This cluster actually lies between the genetic profiles of the early Bronze Age Unice culture, it's this one, which was spread across the Central Europe, and the Middle Bronze Age Chynic culture, found in northern areas beyond the Carpathian Arc in the present-day Poland. I'm talking about these individuals. The only genetic outlier from our group is the grave 282 here, which is particularly interesting and will be discussed at the end of the presentation because it's a very nice example. Recorded haplogroups show that the Y chromosome have a much lower variability than the mitochondrial ones, as you can see here from the list. Therefore, we're suggesting a patrilineal system and higher female exogamy, which is a pattern that is very often seen also in other prehistoric societies. Our sample also reveals several family ties, speaking especially about 2 brothers, 2 individuals with a second-degree relationship, and 6 more with a distant second or third-degree kinship. Shared IDB segments in DNA, you can see the results here, displayed on the map, indicate that the population likely formed thought mixing of the early Bronze Age group from Central, Northern, and Southeastern Europe, and it's supporting ideas of the strong connectivity and possibly mobility at that time. In contrast, in the later phase, the picture here down, a distant kinship links appear only to the north, especially to the Chynic culture. Because skeletal parameters used in anthropology to determine the gender are not developed before puberty, the only reliable source we have are the gender-related burial positions and ADNA data showing biological sex. All the sub-adult graves from Nižná Myšľa so far match both their burial positions and the biological gender, suggesting that these gender-based burial rules were followed in the community from a very young age. The only exception we found so far is the baby girl with a regular grave inventory who died at the age around 1 or 2 years and was placed on the right side, which is a position typical for male. As mentioned, the kinship analysis revealed 2 siblings, brothers. They share the same Y chromosome and mitochondrial haplogroups, indicating they have the same mother and father. Although both graves were not located close to each other, Their grave gods were similar, as you can see on this opposite side of this slide, suggesting they may have belonged to the family involved in a specific craft because they contain the same type of the tool. This idea is independently supported by anthropological findings showing skeletal-related activities observed in different forms on both of the skeletons of these boys. This may not be a rarity because we identify a similar link between the grave gods and the anthropological evidence pointing to active involvement of children in a craft work within the wider family unit into other child graves which were connected by a second degree of kinship. And as I promised, we would like to conclude our presentation reflecting a double burial that bring a very interesting archaeological, anthropological, and ADN data. It's a grave 282, 283, located in the early part of the cemetery here, particularly here. And it contained the remains of an adult and a child buried side by side in a flexed position on their left sides, suggesting that they are both female gender. The adult woman was estimated to have died between the ages 35 and 45, while the baby girl was likely a newborn or even a perinatal age. According to the aDNA analysis, they belong to different mitochondrial haplogroups and were not genetically related. The baby girl fits well, you can see the baby girl here, within the genetic cluster of the Nižná Myšľa population, while the adult woman stands out as a clear outlier, genetically matching early Bronze Age populations from either Germany or the Balkans. Genetic results confirmed that the biological ties were not the main that shaped the social structure in Nižná Myšľa, and this is supported also by the anthropological findings, which we discovered at the adult woman's skeleton, whose teeth show signs of occupational use, especially wear, polishing, small fractures, notches, and chipping, and indicating that she used her teeth as a tool for a quite long period and intensively. Moreover, her robust deltoid tuberosity on the femori, healed hand injuries, and changes at the muscle attachment sites also points to the intense manual work. These features actually match the grave gods, which included the faience, shell, and the bronze ornaments worn on the head and the chest, plus a rare clothing apron made from the faience, you can see here, indicating that she was of wealth and high social status, which could be possibly related to her craft work. The toolkit suggests that the toolkit I'm talking about is here, suggests that she made bone awls for processing the organic materials. Moreover, her non-local origin might be aside the aDNA expected also by a foreign decorated cup with a stylistic connection to the northwestern Romania, and her above average height compared to the other women in the cemetery. She was a bit centimeters higher than a usual woman, which were examined within this population by anthropologists. However, as I mentioned, this is just top of the iceberg, as we are currently just finished the sampling of the more than 200 individuals, not just from Nižná Myšľa side, but also from another in Neolithic, early and Middle Bronze Age comparative sites in the surrounding, in the macro region of the eastern Slovakia. And we are processing it within the wider project. And this project means this first implementation of the biological approach in this period and macro region, including the evaluation not just the burial practices, but also material culture. We will examine the radiocarbon dating, osteoanthropological analysis, aDNA, and wider isotope research. Therefore, we are very curious which result will this project bring. So I hope in the next few years we will give you a much more wider talk about not just the children, but also about the adults and their connection with within this community. And to prove that, yes, we are working. So with this last slide, I would like to thank you very much for your attention.